Hey there everyone, Hitesh here, back again with another video, and welcome to the continuation of our series for Certified Cloud Practitioner, a really amazing AWS exam. And through this series, my goal is to make you absolutely comfortable and compatible with the AWS exam so that you can just pass it with the flying colors. First of all, thank you so much for completing all the previous targets for the comments. A few videos are still missing where you haven't completed that comment target, but it really feels great and I feel really motivated that you really want this series to continue with the further goal and the intensity because these comments are my only motivation. We also have a comment target for this video as well, not gonna be high-end target, just 170 comments. If we can finish that up in next 24 hours, that will be absolute motivation booster for me. So what we'll be doing in this video? In this video, we'll be simply going through with the storage section of the AWS. Now, I really like the CCP exam because it is the one of the only exam which actually allows you to explore so much about the storage in the breadth-wise. We don't go too much into the depth of each one of them, but the breadth-wise of what all storage services are available in the AWS. Usually, people think it's just the S3, which is a simple storage service, or S3 buckets are the way only how things actually get stored in the AWS, which is absolutely wrong. There are so much more an in-depth guide about the storage which is available in AWS, and that's exactly what we'll be exploring, how things actually works, what could be asked in the exam, and in general interview questions. You will be nailing down all of them. First, let me walk you through. This video is going to be a little bit on the theoretical heavy. We'll first understand the concepts behind it and all the things which can be asked in the exam. Then in the next video, we'll be going through and we'll do actually a tiny bit practical about it. Although CCP exam don't ask you to do any practical, but I still want to give it to you. It's a good thing. So let me walk you through. First of all, let me share the screen and walk you through with where things actually are. So if I go ahead and scroll this a tiny bit so that we can see all of this in the one screen, it's a little bit, I can zoom this. I'll not too much zoom it, otherwise it actually is a little difficult for me to actually see all of this. So notice here, I'll go into EC2. This is where you see other storage. By the way, you can search for the simple storage. If you go ahead and say S3, this will give you S3 scalable storage in the cloud. This is the most famous one, which we'll talk at the very end. But what we are interested right now is just to click on the EC2. This is where the remaining of the storage is there, and we want to really talk about them. So if you go ahead and scroll this a little bit, there is something known as Elastic Block Store, in which there are volume, snapshot, and lifecycle manager. This is our agenda. This is our goal. We want to master all of this. And if I just go ahead and click on volumes, there are a couple of things you should pay attention towards. So let me just create a volume. By the way, when you start an EC2 instance, a volume is automatically created for you. We will be able to see this here, but in the next video. Right now, I want you to focus on something like if I go ahead and click on create volume, you'll notice that there are so many types of volumes available. GP3, which is general purpose, and there is special IOPS, which has an input-output operation specialized devices. So notice here carefully, I'm on the S3, and this one is saying that you want to create 100 GB of the size, and IOPS operation is 3000. But what if I want the IOPS operation to be 7000? So if I go ahead and say, hey, I want 7000, this is allowed. These are very high performance disk. But notice here, we are on the SSD, which is GP3. What happens if I go ahead and change it to just 10 GB? The moment I change it to 10 GB, the IOPS operation 7000 is not allowed in this one. But if I go ahead and change it to any provisioned, let's just choose IO2, then in the 10 GB, I can just go ahead and say I need 7000 IOPS, which is allowed to me. This is usually asked in the exam that am I allowed for any kind of IOPS operation? Yes, you're allowed in the provisioned one, but not in the general purpose SSD. There is only a limit. And also the IOPS operation keeps on increasing as you increase the size of the disk. 100 GB disk will have a separate IOPS operation. 10 GB obviously will have less. There is also a list of magnetic and throughput HDD, which is a hard disk drive, the old ones, not the SSD ones. The general purpose ones are the SSD ones. The provisioned ones are specialized disk, which are specialized in the IOPS operation. That's it. Also, we'll discuss a little bit about the availability zone and all of that. So just wanted to give you that what we are studying, where this is. Also notice this enable multi-attach. This is really one of the latest thing which is involved in the AWS. But it has a lot of things. That's why they have this info button at the very next to it. Multi-attach enables you to attach. We'll discuss all of this, and we'll come back onto this one, that how this actually works and what are the things and all of that. That's it. This is all what we want to do. Now we want to study them first, about what is the rules to use them, what are the liabilities, and what all happens. So first of all, what we're going to do is, let's move on to the iPad screen. Let me go ahead and get onto the iPad mode. So all right, so why my screen is not visible? So let me just go ahead on to, okay, finally our iPad is available. Based on your feedback, you guys asked that this grid background was giving you a little bit of the visual hindrance. I have changed it to this visual, although the grid one was much more easier for me to write, but I think for recording the videos, I'll change it and we'll keep it like this so that it's easier for you to understand. All right. So get comfortable. We'll be discussing a long theory lecture on how the AWS storage service works. This whole video will be on the storage service, and there are still a couple of things which are remaining, which we'll discuss in the next theoretical video, but you'll get enough idea. So in the world of AWS, there are three major types of storage services which are given to you. The first one is the block storage. The second one is the file storage, and the third one is the object storage. Each one of them have their own advantage and disadvantage and the way of working in the AWS. You'll also notice there is a small thing written here which says as instance store. This is also available. This is rarely used. It has its own downfalls and the pros as well. I'll walk you through. There are sometimes interview questions in the AWS and sometimes exam questions about this instance store. So don't worry, we will cover that part as well. But just to give you an idea, we never say that we have 4 types like block, file, object, and instance. We usually go with the 3 types. We have block storage, the file storage, and the object storage. And yes, we are aware that there is an instance store. Okay, one by one. Let's go ahead and talk about them. You'll find a common thing in the AWS that everything is abbreviated pretty aggressively, but in the exams, you will be given the full name of everything. Let's study about the block storage, what this does and what it is known for. In the Amazon world, this is known as Amazon Elastic Block Store, or EBS. Quite frequently during your work as well as exam as well as interview, you'll hear about the EBS, Elastic Block Store. All you have to know and remember is this is a block storage. What do you mean by block storage? Block storage are usually hard disk drive. You can say SSD as well. This also includes SSD, so please keep that in mind. But these are your regular storage. In the EBS, you can install OS. On rest of the others, you cannot install operating system. This is where you install operating system. Also, on the EBS, OS actually creates volume. You will notice that either on the Linux system or Windows system, whenever you attach a fresh new drive, you have to format that and then you can partition that drive. That feature actually comes from the operating system. Then only you can make the C drive, D drives, and all of these things. So this creation of the volume is an important step. I have noticed this in a couple of the production grade environment, that people who are absolutely new, they know how to attach an EBS, but they don't know how to format it, so their EBS never shows up. So in order that EBS shows up, it will show up, but in order to use it, you have to create volumes for it. So make sure you are aware of it. In Windows, it's pretty straightforward. You can just right click on the new drive and just simply click on format. In the Linux, there are a couple of commands you have to run through, and these are easily available online, so you don't have to memorize anything. Then volumes are created. Once volumes are created, you can partition them as well, like in the multiple drive, C drive, D drive, and we all are usually familiar with that. So this is basically your block storage. Moving on. Then we have something known as a file storage. This is interesting one. File storage are also like EBS, but the thing is you cannot install OS on them. These are network attached server, or also commonly known as NAS. Yes, of course, we have drives in them and all these things. But the whole idea is we will attach them through the networking process. So on the Linux, actually you mount these drives. In the Linux, you actually call them as like a network drive, server drive, or something like that. And this drive is shared among multiple people. You actually usually connect them via a switch or the internet, and you cannot install OS on them, and these are shared drive. Now, interestingly, the EBS are not shareable. Once you create an EBS drive, that's actually is used by only one EC2 instance. But if you have something like NAS, this is shared among multiple instances at the same time. So multiple people can actually attach this drive, either Linux. One more thing, this cannot be done This simple thing, this NAS, you have to keep a couple of things in mind. I'll walk you through with later on this, that how this is all done, network attached storage and all of that. This is a NAS thing and known as EFS, and these are shared drive. That's all you have to know as of now. I'll discuss more of these things. Then we have these object storage as well. This is the most common storage service, also known as Amazon Simple Storage Service. This was one of the first service which was offered by Amazon. I think if I am not wrong, this is how Amazon got started. They wanted to offer this service to public, and that's how they opened the first service of the storage to the entire world. That was the day how Amazon AWS was born, and after that there was no looking back. Anyways, the object storage is a little different than the file storage and the block storage. Everything is treated as an object in this one. Even your folders, file, everything is just an object. The way how you use it is via the web browser. Of course, you can use them via APIs as well, but the protocols that are going to be used via the programmatic interface is also going to be web friendly, like your create an object, delete an object, read an object. So basically, these are web browser friendly ones. It uses the HTTP protocol if you're using programmatically, but same thing. We call them as S3 buckets, and the bucket needs to be unique, and it's really difficult to find the name for your bucket. Anyways, everything is an object in the object storage. Your file, video, folder, your images, everything, anything that you see around, that is an object. So that's basically it. So on a whole, this EBS is a block storage where you install the OS. EFS is the file sharing, the NAS system, which is on the files. You can show, store, share everything. S3 is an object-based storage. Everything is an object, and everything is run through the web browser and the REST API kind of interface, and goes like that. Now, couple of things that you should know about the EBS, the block storage. Notice here, this is an EC2 machine. This is also an EC2 machine. Now in this EC2 machine, let's just say we have multiple EBS. So one EC2 machine can have multiple EBS. On one you can install OS, another one, maybe whatever you want to use that, you can do that. That is absolutely allowed to do so. But let's just say this is one EBS. One EBS cannot be shared in multiple EC2. So this is already using this EBS. That means this EBS cannot be used by this. That's why this one. So again, I remember this always. This is being asked a couple of times in exam as well. EC2 can have multiple EBS. That's allowed. But EBS, remember this time we have changed the position. EBS cannot have a multiple EC2. This diagram is one of the easiest one to remember. Wherever I have taught, this is the easiest one to remember. Another thing that you have to remember and keep in mind is EC2 and EBS are in same availability zone. This is a requirement. Wherever you are spinning your EC2 machine, your EBS needs to spin on the same AZ. Whenever you open up your EC2 machine and it automatically spins one EBS for you, it always spins up in the same AZ. But if you want to create one more EBS and attach it to your OS or your EC2 machine, it needs to be in the same AZ. Otherwise, you won't be allowed to have an access for it. Yes, there is a way of how you can actually create a copy of it and all that. We'll talk about it. But right now, just remember, they needs to be in the same AZ. If you create a new EBS, attach it, that also needs to be in the same same as this. Now, one more thing. Just now I have mentioned that one EBS can only be connected to one EC2, not multiple EC2. But if you remember, just in the start of the video, I mentioned there is something known as multi-attach. Yes, that's exactly the tech that AWS is giving. That now you can use multi-attach, which can be used to attach one EBS to multiple EC2, but it's fairly new. It has a lot of downsides as well. A lot of configurations are required. In the exam purpose, generally, this is not being asked. Usually it is all about this diagram only, so keep this one in mind. Just for the knowledge sake, just keep in mind there is something known as multi-attach. Okay. Then comes up the disk types. There are a couple of variants types usage. Generally, they are divided into three only categories. The first one is rarely being asked or being used. These are hard disk type. The old ways, magnetic tape and hard disk. Almost nobody uses that. EC2 when spins up a machine doesn't even use that. You have to manually use them. They are slow and they are cheap but very, very slow. It's not fun to use them. The major two category that is being asked in the exam as well as in the interviews is the general purpose and the provision. They have their versions, like there is a GP2, general purpose 2, general purpose 3. Amazon keeps on increasing them, have the performance operations, optimization, a lot of things they do. So they keep on increasing the number from GP2, GP3, GP4, doesn't really matter. The whole idea is they are general purpose. Similarly, we have provisioned IOPS, in which you provision your IOPS. That means you control how the IOPS will work and how much IOPS you require. Again, same thing, they go with the IO1, IO2, IO3, and eventually in the future they will have obviously IO3 as well. The whole idea is you control the max IOPS operation. In the general purpose, you can only have the max IOPS operation of 16,000, which in itself is pretty good, but they heavily depend on how much big the disk size is. Just we saw that the 10 GB cannot have 7,000 of IOPS. Similarly, 100 GB can have that. So just keep in mind here, you don't control that. Whatever is allowed in the disk, you are given only that much. But in the provision one, you can have your 10 GB of the disk and can have 7,000 of IOPS. Obviously, you'll be paying more for it because you are controlling the IOPS, but things are allowed. You can decide IOPS and pay for it. In this one, they increase the disk size and you'll get more IOPS. Now, okay, one more thing. As soon as we spin up these EBS, like whenever we spin up these EC2 machine, one EBS is automatically spinned up for you. But these are root EBS and which are deleted on termination by default. You can change that. It's like you can obviously control that. But the whole idea is that if you spin up a root EBS with the EC2 machine, as soon as you delete or terminate the EC2 machine, the EBS will automatically be deleted along with this, couple of times being asked in the interviews as well. Now this is one screenshot directly taken from the AWS, so big shout out to there. Of course, everything is taken from them, but this screenshot is literally taken from their documentation. I have pasted this here. Now notice here, this is your whole thing is your general purpose. This is your input output operation specialized. You don't have to memorize any of them. Just keep a couple of things in mind which I have underlined. For the general purpose, we usually use them for the desktop or for the boot volumes. Another thing, you don't have to worry at all. Specialized IOPS or the provisioned IOPS you actually use for sub-millisecond latency. The latency is actually low in these general purpose as well, but this is sub-millisecond. That's crazy. And they have more than 64,000 IOPS and workload that requires sustained IO performance and intensive database loads and all that. So if some questions around comes up that I want to spin up a database, need a high throughput, high IOPS, then obviously you want to suggest them the general purpose, the provisioned IOPS, this one. So in that case, you have to answer this one. And if somebody says, hey, we want to go for the boot volumes or virtual desktop, you want to suggest them the general purpose. So that's it. Usually they will not ask you about IO1 or IO2, which one specifically mentioned. No, this is all about provision one or the general purpose. That's it. And again, remember that how much it is max throughput. In this one, 16,000. That's it. Easy figure to remember, but you don't have to memorize it. In this one, you pay it, you go up to 64,000, but you have to pay for it. Anyways, let's go something more. Now that you understand how things actually works on the EBS, let's work a little bit more on the snapshot. So since you're working on your drive, you obviously might want to take backups of the drive and might want to use it in other machines as well. This is where EBS snapshot comes up into the picture. And also one more thing, data lifecycle manager. We saw this in one of the screens when I shared in the earlier of the videos on the web browser. Yes, that's exactly where we saw the lifecycle tag. This is exactly what we're discussing here. So snapshot is a term which is used by Amazon for the backup. They don't like to call it backup. They like to call it as snapshot. So we'll also call this one as a snapshot. Also, if you want to manually take the snapshot, go ahead, be my guest. But if you want to automate that task, then you can have the data lifecycle manager, also known as DLM. Yes, I told you, aggressively they go for the abbreviations, but hey. So what else happens? First of all, notice this diagram. This is our region, US East 1, Mumbai region, whatever the region is. Each region is divided into multiple AZs. This is our AZ1, this is our AZ2, just hypothetically. Now, as I mentioned, the EC2 and EBS needs to be in the same AZ, otherwise you cannot use them. I cannot just go ahead and attach this EBS in here. That's not possible. So what we do in that case, if something like this is required or needs to be done, is you take a snapshot of this EBS. That means you take a backup. Once you take a snapshot of this EBS, this snapshot actually lives in the region, not in the AZ. Once actually this is in the same region, then this snapshot can be attached to this EC2. We can actually just do that. So this is really nice, and we are allowed to do so. And on top of this, this snapshot can be converted into AMIs as well. So basically what happens is this EBS has a lot of operating system information. You might want to install some servers, some configuration on that. And now you're making a copy of your disk. Now, anybody who actually uses or attach this disk and start an operating system, same operating system, he'll get the exact same things that you have done. So this is like a snapshot or a image that somebody has designed. That's why we call this one as AMI. So Amazon Machine Image. So anybody who use this AMI, they actually can have the exact copy of the machine that you have designed. These all snapshots are actually stored on S3. That's why you can actually directly use them. Okay. One more thing you have to remember is these snapshots, you can take a copy of this copy as well, and further this can also be copied. So one thing you have to remember, these are incremental updates. So whatever changes are there from this to this, only these changes are stored in it. These are incremental updates, so not the whole one. This is a manual process so far what we have done, but if you want to automate this entire process, then there is something known as Data Lifecycle Manager, which allows you to do automatically all things. You can automatically create the EBS, you can automatically delete the EBS, you can convert the EBS into AMI. All these things can be done automatically. This is something known as data backup. A very common thing you'll be seeing of this data backup process, especially in the auditing. There are a lot of sensitive organizations who don't want to just delete the backups just like that, or want to audit that how actually your machine were performing, were they secure at this point of time, especially the banking organizations, or especially in India, companies like which handles the UPIs and interact with them like PhonePe, Paytm, PayPal, Stripe, all these organizations, they take a data backup, and they have something known as compliances and mandatory audit that you have to go through. So these data backups are actually used in that case. You can also keep on updating your AMI. Let's just say right now you had just one server installed on your system and you wanted to take a backup and create a copy of it, but later on you decided that, hey, I'll use one more configuration in the servers. Then you can actually update your existing AMI and work with that. Okay. Now coming back on to one more thing, which is known as instance store. We have so far ignored this. So notice here, there's a little bit more things that you have to do. Although I've mentioned here that this is on the same AZ, your EC2 machine and the EBS machine. But there is one more thing you have to remember, that whenever you spin a EC2 machine, your EBS might be on a different computer altogether, because everything is virtualized in this case. So this is your EC2 host. Let's just say this is one computer and there is another computer which is hosting the EBS. Yeah, that's how things actually work under the hood. So you need a network interface card, or also known as NIC. And through this NIC, you actually attach EC2 with the EBS. Obviously, you don't realize it. It looks like you have plugged in the hardware in the same machine, but under the hood, they actually takes a little bit time to actually perform the operations and whatnot and all these things. So all these things are not physically attached to it. They are attached through a NIC card, so they are connecting through the network. But there is something known as instance store. These instance stores are actually on the same EC2 host. So all these blue dots that you see, yes, on the same machines, these instance stores are there. Now you might be wondering, if these are actually on the same machine, they obviously will be high performant and high networking. Yes, of course, you are correct. So why don't we use this all the time? There's a problem with them. Yes, they are physically attached, they are high performance, but the way how they are designed in the Amazon is you actually lose all the data on the shutdown. As soon as you shut down the EC2 machine, whole data on these disk or the instance stores, they actually go away. They are completely wiped off the system. So in case you need something where you are comfortable with removing the data, but you need a fast access of their data, then they can be used. That's why most of the time you don't see them being used too much, but there are obviously use cases. So always remember, instance stores, you can use them. They are high performance, physically attached, but you lose the data. So that's the one thing. In the EBS, you don't lose the data. As soon as you shut down the machine, this one you lose. On the termination, you can configure that EBS should be saved and should not be deleted, but you don't have much control here. All right. This is it. We will move on to the console. I'll walk you through all these things and how these things actually looks like. Although from the exam perspective, you actually don't need them, but still I'll try to walk you through a little bit. There's still tiny bit more information that we need to talk about, but I think this is already enough, almost half an hour, but I think that's a good information we have stood and understood. Let's go ahead and catch up in the next video where we'll dive deep into the console itself of AWS. and don't forget the comment target.